Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fridays with Steve. As you can see, I'm on the road. I'm here in our offices in Southfield, Michigan. It's nice and quiet on a Friday morning. I think I've exhausted the whole team and maybe the whole company with my in-office presence. You can interpret that as you will. It's nice when I come and stay. There's actually a hotel connected to our office building, and so I have this lovely little 3-minute walking commute. But because of that, I'm in early. I go back late or go out grab something to eat late, and so there's probably a lot more in office time than folks are used to in a regular week. We're very much a hybrid organization, so hybrid to the point that one of us lives in a different state. That person would be me. But it has been a lot of fun being in person this week with my team, my organization, as well as people from all over the company. A lot of people I don't get to see or interact with on a regular basis, folks in delivery or in finance and accounting and operations and things like that. And so it's been a really fun week for me. And it's kind of a fun topic then to talk about, thinking around effective communication. And what I want to do today is really just have some backdrop slides, not really content slides, but just some things to kind of prompt me to walk you through some of the things that we think about as an organization, or we think about as a professional services delivery organization, as well as a lot of things I think about personally when it comes to communication. So we'll talk about Teams, we'll talk about email, talk about Copilot. We'll talk a little bit about meetings and things like that. I've taken some notes because, over the last couple of days doing my prep work, things would hit me like a thunderbolt, like, oh gosh, got to remember to talk about this. And so you'll see me kind of referencing some notes as we go through our time together. I'm also standing at a desk in the office. And so I'm a mover on stage. So when I have the opportunity to present on a stage, I always feel bad for if there's a spotlight tracker that has to try and track me down on the stage because I'm always moving. So I want to attack this a couple of different ways. I've got some scenarios, I've got some tips, and I've got a couple of closing thoughts. And so information that is real time and personal, sort of one-to-one. And, we've seen this massive evolution in corporate-based instant messaging. I'm old enough to remember things like AOL Instant Messenger, and sort of the advent of this real-time communication, and then it being introduced into the business world, whether it was Office Communicator, Skype, and all of those tools and things like that. But, that has become, Teams chat has become that, current flavor of that real-time one-to-one communication. And I say one-to-one or one-to-few, you kind of have to watch out that sort of group chats create sort of competition internally for things like channels or regimented file sharing, because group chats have some unique characteristics around, they aren't instantly, visible to, say, a new person in the organization because it's not channel-based or team-based. There's a lot of nuance with file sharing. We've run into it lately where it's great that you can just share from OneDrive. It's great that you can just share into chats. But oftentimes we find a little bit later on in the process that it's suboptimal, that it isn't in a place that, we can add people, that we can, sort of have that audit trail and things like that. You add someone to the conversation, they don't instantly have access. And it really leads to kind of OneDrive problems. The other issue with group chats, and when you get large like that, like I said, you're sort of competing for air with the things that should be in the channel, that should be searchable for all, that should be reference material for new employees and things like that. And so, one-to-one real-time communication, if you're going to personally reply to an email, you're going to, personally want to have that conversation, using Teams chat is certainly the way to go. It keeps it within sort of the corporate communication umbrella. It respects all the security policies. After someone leaves the organization, you still have access and things like that. But like I said, there's some things to watch out for. And that's really that second scenario, right? It's real time and personal, but has value to a wider audience, right? So I'm trying always every day with my leadership team to figure out, hey, is this an IM to them, a Teams chat to them, or is this a channel post in the marketing team, and I at message the leader that it's really directed towards, but at the same time, it's this nice FYI to everyone in the organization. It's this nice FYI or information source to someone that joins in the future. And that's, one of the powers of, really using the channels to be able to communicate. Our service delivery team, always posting questions, always interacting with each other. And maybe I have a question about TCP/IP routing, and I know Bruce is the expert in that, and I post a chat and I at Bruce, but somebody else sees it and they know the answer too, and they're able to wade in and provide information and so forth. And they wouldn't be able to see that if it was just Bruce and I, connecting. The file sharing is going to be a lot better. It's going to be in that files repository in Teams on SharePoint. It's going to be much more searchable. Like I said, it's going to support that new team member on, old team member leaves, all that information, all that institutional knowledge, stays in a place that is accessible for everyone. And, it allows the chat, it allows the conversation to go where it needs to go. Like I said, other people can jump in, tangents, files, all of those kinds of things can really inform the conversation if you open it up to the broader world, right? It's just like thinking about something like information protection and labeling, where you're like, here's here's an audience, and then here's a bigger audience, and then here's an even much bigger audience, and try and error on the side of who needs this information and making it available to them. I think that example that I used of, now I'll pick on sales, right? If I want to communicate something because of a question Brittany DeChico may have asked me, but I want the whole team to be informed of the answer, right? Or I want the whole team to have the opportunity to learn from the experience. That's where the channel piece really comes into play, right? It really allows for that kind of collaboration and that kind of visibility to everyone on the team. So Teams has had kind of a checkered, past, a checkered, use case around this real-time announcement, wide audience kind of modality. You still got Yammer and Viva Engage, quarter in the jar, hanging out there as kind of this, hey, it's a platform for broadcast messages and large organizations and large groups and things like that. But there was a lot of promise when Teams first came out. I remember talking to a lot of HR departments about, doing announcements and having everybody see corporate communications and stuff like that. And, it's a little lumpy in the sense of, do people really see them? How do you audit them seeing them? How do you draw attention to it? But it is nice that there is this announcement feature within Teams channels. Most of the organizations that I've been a part of or that I've worked with always have one that is like all company general, right? And this is the place where you don't want those free-for-all discussions. You want announcements that are, RTF formatted and have replies locked down, or only moderators or admins can reply. And you have the ability to make something that looks more like an official press release or official corporate communications, but still use Teams as your vehicle. Like I said, I think there was some early notion that this would replace a lot of like structured comms from, say, like marketing teams or corporate communication teams or HR teams. I don't know if Teams has really fulfilled its promise in this space. It's certainly a great tool, adding the entire organization here at Apex, letting people know there's donuts in the break room, right? It certainly is very much sufficient in that space. When it comes to official corporate comms and things like that, probably want to think about the best modality, the best vehicle for getting out to your folks. Tried to find like the oldest looking terminal or computer I could find with a green screen. There's still a place for email, right? It's important information. It needs to be consumed by everyone. The criticality of time isn't there maybe, but the criticality of everyone gets it. It's in everyone's inbox. They have access to the information. If they don't read it, consume it, adopt it, that's a different challenge. That's not a communication challenge because you did provide it to them. It still has these nuances of mail rules and offline handling, and I know a lot of people have invested a lot of time and effort into managing their inbox and making sure that the right things come to the top of the pile. It feels more official, right? One of the things that has changed for me over the last 10 years is not just the introduction of instant messaging, but also the introduction of text messaging and sort of using those communication vehicles versus email, right? At the start of my career, email was instantaneous and as good as it got. So we got very comfortable with that. But it still remains sort of that official communication channel, legally responsible way to communicate to employees and things like that. And so there is a time and a place for it. You just want to be sensitive to, is it the right information? Is it, is it conversational? Is it broadcast announcement? Are there implications around auditing or compliance or regulatory kinds of things where, you have to be able to prove that, all employees read something, right? And obviously you have to go even further in some cases and, they've got to do digital signatures, or they got to check a box, or, they have to take a training online about compliance. You got to make sure they get all the way through it. So there's still a place for email. I think erroneously, maybe even I was guilty of it at times. I think we sort of promised a no email world when Teams was first introduced by Microsoft. There was sort of an edict to the Microsoft employees that they had to swap out email for Teams, right? How many emails in your inbox can we replace with a Teams modality? And I think that's a fine approach, but that number isn't 100%, right? And they certainly learned that over time as well. So let's move into a few tips. I'll talk a little bit about Copilot first. And so my own experiences, again, another plug for Microsoft Image Generator. All of the artwork in this deck was created by me using, a form of the AI that the Microsoft provides via its image generator, right? Give me a robot working at a laptop with a businessman in the background on a beach, right? And I had 4 options. I thought this was the best one. But to be able to do that via Copilot, via AI is really incredible. So the ways Copilot is sort of coming into the world for me, it's got a lot to do with drafting emails, drafting responses. That suggestion is right there. It's easy to hit the button and be able to say, hey, give me a suggested response, or give me a suggested response based on me still having these 3 questions, those kinds of things. And so that has worked its way into my world. I think even more importantly, though, is the generate a summary. Generate a top points. I'm sure, like most of you, sometimes the email, by the time it lands in my inbox, my team is great. Whether it's the front line, whether it's our director, our directors across the business, or whether it's coming to me, I think everybody does a great job. And so when it comes to me, oftentimes it's been worked through a lot, or there's been a lot of communication. And so for me to be able to say, rather than spending a long amount of time, reading through an entire thread to make sure I have the full context, I always like to start with the Copilot summary and just be able to say, hey, net this out for me. Oftentimes, my leaders do a great job of managing me and sort of framing, hey, Steve, here's the response I need. Here's the question. Here's the response I need. I know it's a long thread, but let me boil it down for you. They do a great job of that sometimes. Sometimes you need all of that information, and so using the Copilot summary is really a great way to go. Another one I've turned into a big fan of is turning data into visuals. One of the things that I don't think I'm great at is taking raw data and making it a visual, but not taking it all the way into sort of like the Power BI world, or even spending a lot of time crafting a chart or a graph at Excel. And so taking a simple table, turning it into a visual, inserting that visual into a communication, an email, a document, even Teams. I'm pretty famous for using visuals in Teams. I just think oftentimes, my screenshot or a picture of something can communicate. We do a lot of rooms. We send a lot of pictures around to these rooms, right? That communicates a lot more than a set of dimensions and how tall the ceiling is, right? Just send me a picture of the room, right? So we're using Copilot a lot in that space. The last one that kind of fits in this communication piece and the meetings piece is that using those Copilot meeting recaps and using those in email or Teams communications as the follow-up email, who's got assigned tasks, what are the go-dos. I meet a lot with vendors and partners of Apex, and oftentimes, whether it's an intro meeting or even whether it's one of our rhythm meetings with some of our channel partners, oftentimes we'll take that summary and send the recap email between the two organizations, so we're all clear on what the follow-up is, right? We just had an example yesterday where someone followed up a step behind where my team had already followed up. And so there's a little bit of lack of clarity on what the steps were after the meeting. And so I love those Copilot summaries coming out of meeting recaps, or Copilot summaries, as well as the meeting recaps, as a way to sort of capture action and get going. If you're going to use email, use it well, right? There's a few things that I've learned. I try and stick to them. I hope people appreciate it. Subject lines are important. They're the first thing people see. I now have experienced multiple people in my career that thinks that guidance means take all the information that you want in an email and put it in a subject line. I swear to God, it's happened a couple of times early in my career, and it's happened a couple of times recently. That's not what I'm saying, but have thoughtful subject lines. FW : FW : FW : FW : appointment request tells me nothing about the 7 email chain that's below, right? Change the subject line, change it to something that is useful or contextual. Oftentimes I will preface a subject line with an action verb, right? For your review, action, important, urgent, something that even before we get to the subject sets the context of, hey, I'm asking you a question and I need you to think about it in this way, right? It's just for your information, or it's something I need action on. Then beyond the subject line, as best as possible, do the summary. Call it an executive summary, call it TLDR, right? Do something that pulls the basic information or the basic question to the very, very front. Action, decision needed on, customer retention program. Summary, we need to decide by Friday whether this program continues based on the results so far. Now let's get into the context setting, or me making a case, hey, we need to continue it, we need to discontinue it, right? And getting into the flow of the email after that. Because if nothing else, I've set the context, I've set the expectation. And in a lot of cases, people are not always 100% about reading through on everything. And so if I'm only going to capture your attention for a few seconds or a few lines, I should make it as worthwhile as possible. That said, shorter emails are always better, right? If you find yourself spending 30 minutes crafting an email, that might be an indicator that you're in the wrong format, that you're in the wrong modality. Is it a meeting? Is it a phone call? Is it is it a conversation in Teams? Those really, really long emails, really tough to consume. And then what's my response? You asked me 57 questions. You wrote a tome that took me 8 minutes to read. Now what do I do, right? Do I engage in that same behavior back? Do I, spike it and say, let's have a meeting? Well, if I say, let's have a meeting, well, we should have started with that, because I know you invested 26 minutes in writing the first email. And so, make sure you're doing it right. Also watch out for the emails that turn into convos, turn into conversations. If people are replying in a minute, and then in a minute, and then in 2 minutes, hey, what are we doing? Let's huddle up. Let's do a stand-up meeting. Let's move this to a team chat. Let's all walk down the hall and grab a bottle of water in the kitchen and talk it out, right? When you see that conversational nature starting an email, it's sort of time to spike it. Meetings are critical, right? And meetings are how we oftentimes make decisions, make progress, so maximize them. And it starts with the invitation. It starts with thinking about the subject line. It starts with thinking about the agenda. I really need to see agendas in meeting requests. I have been known to even reply to individuals maybe above me in an organization, or above my pay grade in other organizations, like, hey, what's this for? Right? I don't understand. I don't have the context. And it's not because I'm dumb. It's because, you haven't provided it, right? You assumed that, a partnership meeting, I would understand what you want to accomplish. That, do we have a problem in our partnership and you want to fix it? Is it about reviewing results? What is it about, right? And so that kind of clarity is super, super critical. I'm even kind of a militant about the meeting options, reminders. Is it out of office, or is it busy, or is it working elsewhere? Do I want responses? Can you propose a new time? Can you forward the invitation? I actually take a couple of seconds and think about those things as I'm sending a meeting invite. Also think about the time frame. If you build an agenda, then you've done the work to say, well, how long is this going to take, or how long should this take? One of the greatest pieces of wisdom I received was very, very early in my career, where a gentleman by the name of Dana just looked at me and he said, Steve, what are the odds that every meeting's an hour? And knowing enough around mathematics and physics and logic, I'm like, it's pretty small. Yeah, you're right. It's really, really, really small. So, sometimes folks struggle with managing calendars where things don't start, on the hour, on the bottom of the hour, don't always last 30 or 60 or 90 minutes. But try and get people around you comfortable with that. I do 25-minute meetings. I do 40-minute meetings. I do 20-minute meetings. Because that's what the agenda requires. It's also okay to finish early, but if you're going to finish early, then how do we, sort of embed that into the calendar so people can plan on it? We've set a lot of our meetings to record and transcribe so we can use Copilot. That's one of the requirements. We've done recurring meetings and go in and set the team settings for the whole recurrence to be automatically record, right? It has to change behavior a little bit, right? Oftentimes our meetings will spin off into other conversations, maybe ones that aren't, maybe are personal, like everybody else will drop off a meeting and I'll talk with my boss about something, well, you stop the recording because that's accessible to everybody. Or do we drop and just have a conversation on Teams, right? Make sure you have a timekeeper. Use all those meeting flags and options so that people can better manage their calendar. Watch out for recurrence, right? Runaway recurrences. Why are we having this meeting? Or the recurrence attendees just grow and grow and grow. And pretty soon you've got a daily recurring meeting with everybody in the team or everybody in the organization. And it's like, well, how did we get here? We added Tim, 1 week because he had an update on a project he was working on. Now Tim sits in that meeting every week. The flip side of that is always make sure your employees, your peers, people in your organization feel comfortable with even getting to a meeting and going, hey, I don't think this is for me. I don't think I have anything to contribute. I don't think I have anything, any stucks or needs that I have that will come out of this meeting. I'm going to go. I think that's an okay thing to do. Be willing to change modalities. I've already talked about that a little bit, right? I'm very famous for, if it's an email, I will drop people to BCC. There's 9 people on it, but now it's clear it's an action item for me and a couple of people on my team. I move them to BCC. I let them know, hey, we got this. We're running with it. This is the last message you'll see, and I'll initiate the work with my team or my organization, right? Dropping people. Just like I said, on inviting people from meetings, dropping people from communications. Steve has left the chat. That's okay, right? It's it's a sign that you've got the right people working on the right things. I check for the agenda items beforehand. I look for opportunities to optimize for people's time. If it's a back and forth in email, should we put it in Teams? If it's back and forth with a document, should we get it in Teams/SharePoint so we can collaborate on it in a different way? Watch for something that starts as one thing turning into something else. I think that's critically important, right? You've got the schedule meeting from an email button. You've got the send an email from Teams kinds of interaction, right? Because maybe at some point you go that direction as well. And then, is in person an option, right? Like I said, I've been here all week. It's been amazing with my organization and the whole team. Because, sometimes you just, you accomplish more, you accomplish different things because of the in-person piece. And I've really appreciated it this week. The last tip before I wrap with a closing thought here is just manage your outbox. This is one I just live by, and outbox has now expanded to all forms of communication. Who's waiting on me? So we have a couple of meetings every morning, just stand-up meetings here at Apex, where the whole theme of that meeting is telling the team who you're waiting on. If you've got us stuck, hey, Brittany, I need this from you. Hey, Elena, I need this from you. And just being really clear about that, because I think the most important thing we do is ensure that the people that we work with, the other organizations that we work with, are getting the things they need to do their best work, right? And then if everybody's doing that, that means I'm getting that too. I'm getting timely responses. I'm getting attention to problems or questions that I have, in the necessary time frame. And so, this sort of started as a, 7 habits kind of thing, specific to email, but it's really expanded to all communication forms. Watch out for, last in, first out with your inbox versus first in, first out. The default sort of your inbox is the newest messages on top. And it can real quickly get to the point that out of sight, out of mind is that email that's been waiting for a response for a day or a week or a month or a year, right? Because it just keeps going down. I've never been able to say reverse that sort. I know some people that have pulled that off. I think most of us are getting kind of a squeamish feeling thinking about new emails appearing at the bottom of the list so we can't see them. It sort of sets us off a little bit. But look for strategies, look for strategies to help you think about what people are waiting on. Schedule time on your calendar. We've got some people in our organization that are really good about blocking their calendar for specific communication, response, fulfilling request time. And that can be really critical and really, really helpful. And then the last thing I'll say is, we've got all these digital tools, we've got all these digital options. When all else fails, or just sometimes it is 100% appropriate to be like, I'm just gonna pick up the phone, right? I'm pretty notorious for doing that around here, where there'll be some back and forth, or there'll be a tough question or a tough problem we're working on, and it'll be message, phone call, right? I get to a point and I try and make a joke. I'm sick of typing, or I can't type fast enough. Let's just talk. And so I'll do that quite often. The in-person piece is also super important. Those personal relationships, bonding over challenges and working through things. I think it's been a great sign this week. Every every night, literally night after work. There's been, a different cohort of people that are willing to spend a little bit extra time, talking with me, working on problems and things like that, even after hours, after 5 o'clock. And so that has been absolutely amazing. And sometimes that's just what the situation, would be best served by. I almost said requires, I don't exactly mean that. I mean, it would be best served by that. And it's not always an option, but the phone or the in-person piece is always an option. And this is one of those fun Microsoft Image Designer issues where if you really pay attention in this video, we've got 2 phone headsets and 3 hands. So not perfect yet. I'm not really worried about my job. It's called a payphone, spelled with an E instead of an A. That's weird. And so, I talked a lot about Copilot. I talked about how it can help us. At the same time, there's still room for some things to get better. So that was what I wanted to relate. Got through all my notes. Like I said, modality matters. Sometimes you print out your slides and you make notes so you remember things you want to talk about. When it comes to all of this converged communications, we're here to help. We've been doing this a long time. We've got the experience of helping customers just like you in situations just like yours. And so because of that, we're here. We're ready to help. And so reach out to me, sthompson@apexdigital.com. Visit our website, visit our hybrid work solution, book a meeting, reach out to us, get something set up, and let us know how we can help with all the converged communications in your environment. And with that, thanks for joining me on Fridays with Steve from lovely Southfield, Michigan. It was great being here all week, and I'll see you next time.